First, I just kind of want to talk about our climate right now and what you guys are seeing, observing, and how it's kind of affected your life and your thought process. And anybody can start kind of what your initial thoughts are.
I can go. Obviously, I feel like it's really hostile right now all around. And I've noticed personally that like social media has played a big part. People will like form an opinion just based off of other people's opinions and jump in without doing their own research. And I think that's kind of dangerous because you can come in so far one way and then realize you're wrong, but maybe be too stubborn to switch your viewpoints. And I've seen that happen a lot, I think.
Interesting. How about you, Nigel?
I think the first word that will come to mind is anger. A lot of people have anger that they don't know where to put, and that's why we see the looting and the rioting, and it comes from a lack of trust because a lot of black people can't necessarily trust the police. When you don't feel you can trust your legal system, then where else do you go? You don't have anywhere to put your frustration. So that's what I think.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Cameron?
My word would be tired. Especially in the Black community, we're tired of implicit biases leading to violence, leading to our lives being lost at the hands of police. We're just really tired on my end.
Mm-hmm. And so I've noticed that both of you have kind of teamed up together to try to bring a voice and in a peaceful manner. So talk about how that all started, these demonstrations that you've been leading.
Well, I met Cam a couple years ago, and I saw a video of her standing on something out there at a protest, and I was like, yeah, I gotta hit her up so we can do something together. Because I started the Black Student Union at my high school, Country Day, and it took us about a year to start that. There was a lot of resistance from the administration, so I kind of got some experience with doing some social justice work, and I thought I could take that out to the real world.
And why did you start that at your school?
Because the school is predominantly white and it tends to be very conservative, and there's not really a great climate for African American students there. There's been a large outcry for many years, generations of African American students who have many problems that have not been addressed. So I thought that starting a Black Student Union would give a place for Black students to have a voice.
And what was the outcome of that, like for the couple years that you were there?
Well, we finally started the Black Student Union in my senior year, and we're just hoping to keep that going. We don't want it to fade out. We want to keep leadership going.
And has it been, at least in what you know about from that first year, in terms of not just the Black students, but all students, did you notice a change or a difference?
Oh, most definitely. As soon as we started the Black Student Union, there was an Arab Student Union started. Everybody wanted to start their own, collectives in order to bring about change and more acceptance through the students.
Excellent. And so you've been out here demonstrating. This didn't just start 2 weeks ago. What inspires you to do this?
For me, kind of similar to what Nigel said, at my high school, North Farmington, we hadn't seen a diversity club in 7 or 8 years. So during my junior year, I restarted it. And kind of just because I felt I had a mission as a Black female with an intersectional identity, I needed to join together all of the marginalized groups because North Farmington is a predominantly white high school. So there was just a lack of voice from Black women, from the LGBTQIA community, from the Jewish community, etc. So that's kind of where I started my activism. And with everything happening now, all the injustices, I felt like it was really necessary to get out and do stuff.
And so these demonstrations that you've been doing here in the Metro Detroit area, what do you hope the outcome will be?
We want to see change. We want to see real change. We want to see the police system reconstructed because at this point, I don't feel like it can be reformed. I think we need to completely start over and build from the bottom up to change everything.
And what about just the culture? You talk about your cultures at school, maybe the cultures in communities. Like, do you want to see change there too, not just in police departments, but just in the thought process of people in general?
Definitely. I want more allies to step up and come out. There's already been so many, but I want people, non-Black communities, to speak up when they see things that aren't right going on, when they see injustices, when they see implicit biases. Like, it's important for them to use their privilege to speak up, so that's what we're going for.
One thing that I noticed too with your demonstrations is that they're not predominantly Black. Most of the people that have been coming are not Black.
So
Right.
Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's amazing to see, even with the movement in the 60s, you always have to have white allies. You know, even when it came to abolishing slavery, you had to have what were they, Quakers? You know, people, white allies. You always have to have allies of different demographics because in American history, we know that black voices are generally not listened to. So you have to have those allies, as I said.
And so, how has that impacted you seeing? Because you don't know who's
Right.
going to show up when you put out the word that you're going to have this demonstration. So, what is your reaction when you see the sea of diverse people, many of them non-black?
Well, I think that's really what makes our group special is because we wanted to bring protests to the suburbs. You know, I don't want to say it's preaching to the choir to protest in Detroit, but that's a predominantly black area. When you can bring the protests out to the suburbs, you allow everybody to come in and have a voice and show their frustration with what's been happening.
Mm-hmm. And so, Caleb, your perspective, you kind of at a young age, you know, came to Detroit and saw some things that really troubled you with the underprivileged and the homeless population. And so you've had this early exposure to a lot of different cultures and a lot of different backgrounds. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's just like, you know, since I started at such a young age, it's normal. You know, I've been volunteering in Detroit for a long time, so I've seen people of all different cultures, and I think that's just really important for a young kid. And one of our most, favorited events that we do at the Caleb Light Project is called Game Night. Basically, we just bring pizza, pop, board games down to a shelter, and we will spend our night there. And I think that it's our most powerful event because it's truly just making connections with people of different races, different cultures. You walk into a game night and you'll make friends with somebody that you probably would have never encountered before. So I think that's really powerful.
And so this is something that you started on your own after seeing a homeless person, but through your leadership, you grew that exposure throughout your classmates and schoolmates for years. How do you think that impacts them having that opportunity to interact with people that they otherwise probably would never cross paths with?
I think that it's really it's something special because I go to Detroit Catholic Central and obviously it's predominantly white and they're working on diversity, but I think that a lot of the kids coming from upper class families, they wouldn't get and it's no fault of their own, they wouldn't get the exposure. They're kind of ignorant to a lot of the things that happen, and I think that by providing them with a platform or something that they can expose themselves to that kind of thing is really important.
And how important do you think just that, the exposure is?
Oh.
And in this environment of racial tension and hostility, I mean, one of it is police brutality, but there's a broader issue of racism in America that's been around for a long time. And how much do you think just the opportunity to connect with people of different races, how important is that?
I think it's probably one of the most important things you can do, just like, being face to face with a person of another race, another culture, and, learning, educating yourself about their culture, their beliefs. I think it's really important.
So just growing up, your experiences in school, like, this hostility, as you called it, that we're seeing in social media, and just talking about your own school experiences and we're seeing this hostility and rage right now, but has that ever been a conversation you've ever had in school or an issue? Like, what have been your experiences as it relates to race?
Honestly, I haven't really talked about that at my school so much, which is kind of scary to hear, I guess, because we haven't been, I think we haven't really been focusing on it too much, which is, we should be. Like, I think there should be definitely programs and things to educate people in school for sure. So I don't think we've done enough, I guess. And not just like my school. I know that a bunch of schools have been lacking in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. How about your school experiences? Just have you ever had different situations or tensions with friends, or were your relationships with friends and your experiences at school very positive and multicultural? I'd say prior to college.
Country Day prides itself on being diverse, but I went to that school since second grade. That diversity doesn't necessarily mean diversity of mindset. when you all have people, coming from the same background, you tend to get a lot of the same mindset at a school like Country Day. So, like with the Black Student Union, with Saga, which is the Sexuality and Gender Awareness Club, those were opportunities for us to bring topics of acceptance to the school, because generally in class, with such an academically focused school, we're just going, homework, quizzes, tests, projects, and they generally don't have time to try to fit some of that stuff in.
And how important do you think that is to have that conversation when kids are growing up in the school?
I think it's crucial to have conversations like that, especially because when everyone goes in the real world, in the workplace, there's going to be people from all ethnicities, nationalities possibly, and it's just important to know how to navigate certain situations, and it's important to acknowledge wrong things when you see them, or racism and prejudice. It's important for Black students, for Latinx students, for Arabic students to feel comfortable in their environments.
So what's your message to other young people, to create a more peaceful existence, more accepting and more understanding and more compassionate of cultures and backgrounds? Like, what is your message to other kids? What do you think that they can do right now?
Personally, one of my biggest mottos for my entire project is everything big starts somewhere small. And I think that protesting and getting your voice heard is like a huge step. That gets what you want out there, and you can have a huge platform. But I think it also starts with small one-on-one connections and bridging the gap. So
very good. What about you, Cameron?
For me, I definitely second Caleb. But for me, I would say learn the history of this country, the accurate history. My experience in kind of high school and parts of college, there's almost a complete erasure of African American history in the curriculum. Just know the roots and what this country is built upon, which is honestly the blood, sweat, and tears of Native Americans and of Black people. So know what really happened. Use your positionality as a student to get your voice out, educate the masses.
And I think that even among Black people will build up more strength and confidence, knowing, what your background is and how far we've come and the impact we had in this nation.
Definitely.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's 2020. You can educate yourself. You can dig. You can really dig into the knowledge, especially of your country. You know what I mean? A lot of times in school we're learning European history, and all that stuff is great. But we need to really get into the American history so we can understand and be more empathetic for different groups of people. That came to this country with different backgrounds. Not everybody came here with the same background.
And so, two things that we've been hearing a lot is white privilege and Black Lives Matter. So, when you hear the term white privilege, what goes off in your head? How does that make you feel?
I acknowledge that it exists. Just having the opportunity to not be, and not have prejudice against you is just privilege in itself. And I think that, it's also sad because some people, I feel like myself, I don't abuse that privilege, or I feel like some people may, but to be generalized in a category of white privilege is hard. But I definitely understand.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're all privileged. I know your parents, and privilege can come from a lot of different ways. You sometimes are given different advantages and opportunities and exposure and resources in life. How important do you think it is to utilize that to make a difference?
Oh, I would say very important. With my experience with underprivileged kids, I've seen situations where people are just set up for failure. From the day they're born, their socioeconomic status is just preventing them from attaining the same things that, say, I could. With even more work that they could put in, it doesn't matter. With what they've been given, it's almost impossible to get past to a certain point.
Mm-hmm. And how do they get past that? How does that happen?
With help from people who were born with privilege.
And Black Lives Matter, what does that mean? What do you want people to know from your perspective?
Well, it just means that at this point there needs to be more attention on the preservation of Black life. That's really what it is to me. It doesn't mean obviously that anybody else's life is less important. I don't think that even needs to be said anymore.
How about you,
I would definitely agree. I think it's important to emphasize that Black Lives Matter. All lives, of course, they matter, but all lives can't matter until Black lives are put on a higher pedestal in this country.
And I want to end on you, Nigel, because there's this focus right now on police brutality, on the fear of police, the distrust of police. As a young
Right.
Black man, how do you go about your daily life, and how different is it from other walks of life just because you're a Black man?
Well, even being out in the suburbs, I live around Franklin. When a police officer, gets behind me, I'm a little like, okay, let me make sure, I'm not doing anything crazy here. Which even, small stuff like that, you shouldn't have to go through that. Police officers should be here for all positive experiences. They should be here to uphold the law, of course. But if you're not, doing anything that's harming anybody else, they shouldn't be prying into your business, trying to start something. As we've seen in some of these videos, they're really trying to go at these guys and start something that ended in something. Somebody's life being lost.
Mm-hmm. And so, have you had to have specific conversations just because you're a Black man, like from your parents or from mentors or elders, to say this is what you do, this is how you act, this is where you should go, shouldn't go, what you should wear? Describe that to me.
Just wearing certain clothes in certain areas. Even though I come from a family that's well off, just because I'm Black, somebody can say who's this guy? Why is he here? I was just in Birmingham the other day. I was stopped by me and Cam. I think she was walking up.
Yeah.
The police officer was just kind of sitting back. We were chilling at a corner talking, waiting to actually scout out the area for our protest. And she just pulled up, and even in a nice way, it can still be nice. But she just said, "Oh, what are you guys doing here? Are you guys lost?" And I'm like, "I've been going to Birmingham since I was 4. Never been asked anything like this. I thought that was wild." Yeah.
Interesting. So, lastly, I know I said lastly already, but then I wanted to end on something that I thought was really powerful. The walk that you did in Birmingham, it was nearly 1,000 people,
Yes.
Very peaceful, but you ended up at a specific street corner that you found. Tell me about that.
So first I want to say the walk was put on by Nigel and BAM. The organization is BAM. It stands for Black Activist Mobility Network. It's 5 Black women. And yeah, we started that walk, but on the end of our walk, we came up to an intersection in Birmingham, and the streets were George and Floyd. So that was just a crazy moment to see that, because what are the odds that those are the 2 streets? So it was just a beautiful moment, and everyone was so united, the allies and us, and it was just a great moment.
Excellent. Great job. That was good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I like this question I started out with the last group, which is just, as we look at kind of everything that's happening in our country right now, between a pandemic and now this racial unrest that you're experiencing as young people, and when you think about what's going on, like what's the first thing that comes to mind in terms of the impact that it's having on you, or how you would describe it?
So I think I can lead with that. I would definitely say frustration and uneasiness, because it's kind of like things are building up. It's like one thing after another. It's like we can't even consume one thing that's happening because another thing is hitting us. I saw a headline on one news that said that 2 viruses are killing Black people: coronavirus and racism, and it's 100% a fact. And it's like we can't even deal with trying to be safe, wear our masks and go out because we're worried about being pulled over too. It's like we just can't be comfortable in the space that we're in, and it's really frustrating.
How about you, Miles?
Yeah, I agree with her, with Micaiah. Fear is definitely another emotion going through my mind, because I see a lot of posters that says, am I next? And, you truly don't take into account until you're actually, you realize how affected you are by the situation. But also, I feel kind of determined as well to kind of make it out of the situation. You see, like a lot of more and more Black doctors and lawyers, people that can actually make a change, are coming out. So it kind of makes me feel determined, especially wanting to become a doctor. So determination is definitely an emotion.
Good. How about you, Olivia?
Yeah, I would definitely say frustration and the feeling of being overwhelmed, just because everything is just being layered up, and it's very hard to understand everything because we're just being hit with so much at the same time. And it's definitely frustrating to know that there's so much change that needs to happen, and there's only so much we can do at each step with all that's going on in the world right now.
Mm-hmm. And so as young people, you do have your lives ahead of you. You're armed with this determination. Like, what do you think needs to come from you, from the youth in this time right now?
I can take it. Well, I feel as though social media is a very big platform. More and more stuff is coming out. And before the Black Lives Matter movement happened, people weren't even willing to talk about Black Lives Matter or Black lives in general, liberalism, anything of that nature. And so I feel as though the youth that are, the major users of social media, I think the thing that we need to keep coming out with is the Black Lives Matter movement on social media, so that it can get promoted and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. And Olivia, when you hear the term Black Lives Matter, like what do you think that means? How are you processing that?
Well, I see a lot that it says like all lives matter, but like no lives matter until Black Lives Matter. And I think that kind of saying is so important, because it, like in the last interview, it's someone said like it's not degrading any other lives, but right now in this moment, it is most important that we all acknowledge that Black lives do matter, and that that is what the whole movement is about, and that we really have to respect all lives, but specifically right now, we are fighting for Black lives.
Mm-hmm. And talk about that fight, because you have really been outspoken, Micaiah, about expressing what's happening right now and what you want people to understand.
Yeah, of course. So I've actually been hearing a lot, because I do a lot of outreach to different communities, whether it be youth or whether it be senior citizens. And a lot of things that I've been hearing is that I don't side with Black Lives Matter because I'm not into politics. And that's so disheartening, because it's not about politics, it's about humanity. It's about who we are, it's about us being valued, it's about us being treated equally. So it's sad that people think this is politics. It's not. It's about us trying to claim our humanity, which we shouldn't even have to do. It should be given to us like it is to everybody else. But it's really sad to hear people saying that like they don't want to join with us, or that they're scared to join with us. And honestly, they have a right to be scared to join with us, because the people that are out there protesting and like things aren't being shown on mainstream media, and that's like Miles was saying, that's where we go in with social media, and that's how things are being shown that like older generations don't get to see, because it's not on the mainstream news. Like we see police initiating things, and we see like framing for looting that isn't even happening or being initiated by the Black community, and it's kind of hard to consume, because we're the ones seeing that. Our parents aren't seeing that, so we're going and showing our parents, hey, look at this, we didn't start that. Why are we being blamed for that when we didn't start it? And so it's frustrating, it's confusing, and it's just that's why I try to reach out to senior citizens and to all different groups to get them to understand that, hey, this is not politics, this is our life.
And so one of the words that you used, Miles, was fear. So talk about what you're afraid of.
Well, truthfully, I'm more afraid of police brutality. Let me start off by saying every morning I wake up and I write 3 things that I'm thankful for. And one of the things the past weeks were that I was thankful that I haven't fell victim to police brutality or harassment in general. And so one of the fears that I do have, especially going down to Virginia alone without family or a lot of friends, I fear being harassed or even worse by the police or by racist people in general. So I think that's one of the biggest fears that I have.
That's so unfortunate. Yeah. It makes me sad. It makes me sad that as a young person that you have to carry something that heavy on your shoulders.
Yeah.
But you want to also, I guess when we have this fear and we have this frustration, it's not the full description of your school experiences, right? So talk about like when growing up in Bloomfield Hills High School, like talk about the culture there, talk about the diversity there. What was that like?
Well, at my school, it's very diverse. We have like a wide variety of students, staff, teachers. We've had like, not necessarily incidents, but just things that like, I guess would happen in every high school that should not have ever happened. But I do feel like we are very like such an inclusive school. We have clubs of all kinds. We have like friend groups that are very mixed in religion, race, ethnicity, all that. And I feel very fortunate growing up and going to a school like that we just like get to be included by everyone. But I definitely, I mean, like, I don't know, just in today's day, there's certain things that go on that not everyone thinks the same. Not everyone goes to school thinking the same mindset of that inclusion. But I definitely think that my school tries their best to kind of have that.
And how would you say, you know, growing up in a nice, you know, diverse school and environment like that versus like the society that you're observing, what you see on social media, how is it different?
Well, I guess at school it's very like vocal about kind of trying to include everyone, and we've got like everyone is welcome in the Black Student Alliance and everyone is welcome in the Gay Straight Alliance. Like we're very like speak out like everyone is included. However, not everyone, like our Black Student Alliance is mainly African American students like joining, and our Gay Straight Alliance is mostly gay and straight people, or like, you know. So it's kind of like our school shows our diversity, but at the same time, based on like the society we live in, it's still very staggered and like separated.
But still a welcoming environment if you want to learn. And how important do you think that is? You know, as you're going off into the world, having that exposure to all different types of racial backgrounds.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important, and I think that having like teachers and staff that I can like rely on that may be completely different from me, like I feel like that is so important because I always feel connected, understood, and in the same, like in reverse, understanding of others. And I think that going like to college now, I feel like I have a good or at least reasonable understanding of certain backgrounds and things like that, and I'm always like, I have the feeling that I can always learn more and I can always do more.
And so what more do you think needs to be done when you look back on your high school experience and other experiences that you've had to create a more peaceful, inclusive, and socially just environment? What do you think needs to happen?
Yeah, so my high school is predominantly African American, and a lot of the times when things like this come, you know, to the surface, we hear a lot of like, I hate white people. I don't like white people. We just hear that a lot, and they feel comfortable saying it because we're surrounded by all Black people and we're all young. And it's what I want youth to learn is that you should not hate all white people. What we're trying to get is unity, not divisiveness. And so what you should learn is to understand, why are these people doing this? It's because racism is taught, it's learned. They weren't born racist, you know? Understand their circumstances because you want them to be understanding of ours. They don't experience it and we don't experience their life. So we want to get a mutual understanding so that we can be on the same page and we can fight for the same thing. Because like that divisiveness, like, oh, I hate white people. I don't like white people. I don't like to be around them. We don't want that because you're going to be working with white people. You're going to live with white people. We're all going to be in the same space. We're going to be in politics. We're all going to be in medicine. We need to get rid of that implicit bias. That's why Black women are dying at such high rates when they're giving birth. It's because there are people in medicine who have biases against Black people. We don't want that the same for our community because that's what we're trying to abolish. So I think what's so important for youth today is to gather together instead of separating apart, and so that we can learn and so that we can have a mutual agreement.
And gather in diversity.
Yeah.
Because if you're in an all-white group or an all-Black group, you can probably have similar comments about each other because there's no exposure to the other culture.
Right.
So that you can figure out that we're all the same people. We have similar interests. I mean, like I said, Olivia's mom was my best friend growing up. We loved cheerleading. We had similar interests. We liked to do many of the same things. And just because our skin tones were a different color, it didn't matter at all because we had so much in common. We were inseparable. We really were. So, Miles, when you look upon your high school experience, I guess it would be similar to Micaiah's then, because you went to Renaissance. That's a predominantly Black school as well.
Yeah, it is. Just like Olivia said, I feel as that it's almost the complete opposite with Olivia's school. I think when we walked down the hallway this year, I think I've only saw one white student in my school, not counting the teachers. That we do have white teachers, but like I said, it is very it's not very diverse at all. But I honestly think that helps build confidence within Black students as well, though, to go out with their people, and also with me going to HBCU, it builds confidence because it says that it's okay to be Black when you're around other Black people. It's okay to express yourself. And so once you go out to the world and you are in the diverse world, you see a lot of confident Black people that come from predominantly Black neighborhoods or schools. And also to add to Micaiah's point, I feel the change comes in education of ourselves as well. So not only being taught diverse things, but we taught our own history. It's a lot of things that we don't know, which I feel affects how we interact with other diverse groups of people. So we've learned some of the Caucasian history. It's time, to me, I think it's time that we learn some of our own Black history to kind of express that confidence that we should have.
And how much is that taught? I mean, I guess Black history is probably a bigger subject in a predominantly Black school, but I don't know.
Yeah, no.
It's not.
Yeah, you don't.
It's
You
definitely
really.
not.
I've truly, although I haven't been to any protests, I have taken the time to kind of educate myself on history. And I asked a lot of older people that were police officers in the riots during the '60s and '70s. And so I've kind of taken this time to learn amongst ourselves. And you truly see, talking to those people, you truly see how much we don't know about ourselves. And like I said, I feel that's a big problem that contributes to the racial divide.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I think, to speak to like what Nigel was saying too, when kids say that, oh, I don't like white people, that there are allies in the white population that are just as activists as Black people are for the rights of Black people, and that's been historic. Have played such a huge role in much of the justice that we have been able to see, in the move towards equality has been, a collective effort to get us to where we are. So, Olivia, when you hear that term white privilege, does it make you cringe? Do you understand it? Do you feel offended? What's your reaction when you hear that?
Well, I definitely think that a few weeks ago I would hear white privilege and kind of be offended. I felt like I was not privileged. I feel like I understand a lot of things. And over these past few weeks, I completely understand. Not completely, there's always room for improvement, obviously, but I feel like I understand white privilege more, and I accept it, that I am being born white. I have privilege, and I have a lot of things handed to me that other people have to work for, and it's saddening to know that I have so much that not everyone does have, but at the same time, I know that I need to use my privilege as a tool rather than just accepting what I have. I have to use this to gain privilege for everyone else.
And do you think that that's a new thought process for you to say, well, how can I use this to help others?
Definitely. It definitely is. And I think going back on what Miles said at the beginning was social media. That social media kind of helped me learn that I, as a person, as a white young woman, I have the privilege of having all these things and having this voice that I can get out to a bigger crowd and speak up on other people's behalf.
And also just the diverse background that you've been able to have as well. Not everybody has that, so they don't know how to interact. They haven't had those personal relationships, which I think are essential. And just thinking about your experiences in school, do you think educators need to do more to help to educate on race relations and history better?
I for sure think that. I had one teacher sophomore year that was so influential. We talked about this movement for so long, and it was very powerful. The things she would say were so powerful, but looking back on all of high school, that was probably the only kind of course that I had or teacher that really spoke out about all of this.
And was that even part of the curriculum, or was that?
No, we were talking about slavery, but she really took it to the next level where I walked away from that class just having my mind blown off of all these things that I didn't know, and all these points that I probably would not have thought of if it weren't for her.
What do you guys think about schools, and what can they do better?
I for sure think there's so much room for improvement, especially going to an inner city school. You see a lot of times, that my teachers just weren't consistent. Like, we didn't have teachers every year. We would go half the year with the substitute teacher. And a lot of our teachers that we were getting were Teach for America teachers that were only going to be there for 2 years. And that's how it is for us every single day. And so a lot of the teaching that we do is by ourselves. And if you don't have a family that's going to try to push that initiative for you, you're not going to know. You know, and that's where, like they were saying, that's where social media comes in, and you get to see it. But if you shut yourself out from that, then where do you get it from?
Right.
You know?
What's the source of the information that you're getting on social media? Because that's not always a reliable source of information.
Exactly. And just not having that consistent role of teachers. Like, there's a select few out of the bunch that are consistent and that teach us what we need to know. But there aren't many teachers that are there to teach, especially there to teach Black kids. They're there to get the paycheck and to get the little certification or whatever that Teach for America does, and they leave. They leave us. They abandon the kids. And that's unfortunately a circumstance that a lot of the kids are experiencing, and that's why they don't get the knowledge that they need to know about a lot of Black history. Like, for me, I'm just now learning about that there was a Black Wall Street. Like, and I learned it from my granddad. I'm like, Black Wall Street, what? And then I learned, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is stuff we don't learn, you know? And in the textbooks, we're referred to as savages and rebels and stuff like that. And I'm like, what is going on, you know? And we're programmed to learn that and respect that because that's what we're being taught. And we have to write our little essays about it, do our little quizzes, and that's how we go to college thinking. And that's why, like, you know, going to a PWI, it's important for me to embrace my Black culture and learn more about it because it's so easy for me or for anybody in the Black community to be able to disengage from that when they're being taught other things or when they don't have this perspective of a Black person or somebody who's knowledgeable about Black history teaching us.
So how have you ascended out of that, out of a school with inconsistent teachers? You're now headed to the University of Michigan. You're so outspoken. Like, what influences in your life have helped you to get to this point?
Honestly, I would just say growing up, I came from a low income background. Whole family's Black, obviously. And it was a tough time growing up. And I didn't want youth to have to go through what I went through. You know, I pushed to get the opportunities that I had, and nobody was gonna hand it to me. And I was realizing that nobody was just gonna be like, hey, Micaiah, here's $1,000, you know? So I had to fight for that. And I still to this day don't want you to have to feel like, oh, they have an attitude problem because they're going through things at home. Oh, they can't speak up because they're going through things at home. I want them to be able to tell people that. I want them to be able to know what their community is like and know that there are people there to help them because I didn't know that, you know? So, you know, I'm here now and I want to be able to use the opportunity that I've got and what I've learned to teach other people that aren't just Black, people that aren't just youth, you know, just teach everybody and just be able to use my voice because that's what God's blessed me with.
Yeah, I wanted to attest to Micaiah's perspective as well. You know, growing up on the west side of Detroit, a couple minutes down the street from here actually, in low income background, same story really. And it's through programs like the Boys and Girls Club and things like that make you more confident, that make you want to speak up. Things like Passport to Manhood, just programs that you can get involved in that erases the negative stigma that Black people have in general. When she spoke of the attitude problem, that's already a stereotype that people have, that Black people have. And so starting programs and coming to programs like the Boys and Girls Club and things like that and your foundation, it's programs like that help us out of those tough times, that can help us achieve and succeed against all the odds.
And what do you want people to know that watch this story? You're a young Black man in this time of racial unrest and this fear of police brutality, particularly on Black men. What do you want people to know about you and who you are and the greater, you know, culture of the Black man?
Well, I want people to first, I want to use myself as an example that we can overcome the odds. You know, through all the police brutality, protesting, racism, it's not impossible. And I want to be that person that can show that it's not impossible. And then you have people like Micaiah that can go out and actually write the legislation to help us out, to make it more easier for younger people, younger than me, to come up, to have it easier than I had coming up, to have easier than they had coming up. So I definitely want to be an example.
Very good. You guys want to share anything else? That was outstanding. So impressive. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with, because I know, Zoe, that you participated in one of the marches. So talk about why you went and what that experience was like.
I feel like I feel like everyone should go to a protest. It's really crazy how many people go. It was like over 2,000 people for sure. And I went with my family, obviously, but I feel like, I don't know, I went because I want other people to feel like it's okay. So, like, I'm white, obviously, and I feel like some white people might think that, I don't know, they shouldn't, like, go, because I feel like they might think that it's not their battle to fight, but it definitely is, because I feel like everybody should just be there to support and be an ally.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to just, like, show that, like, it's okay to go.
So you want to be an example for others. Why is that important?
I think just show, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, but I think what you're expressing is kind of what I said, but I wanted to hear you say it. You're saying that you want to be an example to let people know it's okay and that the experience can be positive.
Yeah. Sorry.
I know, it's nerve-wracking. It's always easier to be the person asking the questions than answering them. Believe me, I've been in your shoes a couple times during all this, and I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to be asking the questions. But I do want to hear you kind of describe what that experience was like for you.
Yeah. So, sorry.
That's okay. You want me to come back to you?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and kind of give it some more thought. And I don't know, because have you participated in any of the marches yet?
No, I have not.
All right, so let's just talk about your perspective right now as you look at everything that's happening between this pandemic and this racial unrest, this focus on police and police brutality. Like, how do you kind of describe your perspective?
So my perspective is a little different from anybody else's because I want to be a police officer when I grow up. So seeing it, I'm kind of disappointed. It's just like, wow. Like, you know, people look up to police to protect them, you know, save them and help them. It's like, how do we get to a place where everybody is afraid? Like, how did we, as America, let us, like, ourselves get to a place where the people who are supposed to protect us is really hurting and killing our people? And then it's like, you know, Black people, we work hard, you know, for a lot of stuff, and it's because we had to from our past. So it's like, for us to be a really strong working population, you're killing us off. Like, it's unreal. Like, it doesn't make sense because you just wouldn't think the world would work that way. You wouldn't think that our world works that way. So it's just crazy.
And why do you want to be a police officer?
Because I really want to help people, and I want to touch as many lives as I can. But I also know I'm just one person, and I think that's a really great way. Like, I feel like, especially if I put my mind to it and my heart is really in it, I can touch so many lives just by being a police officer. You know, how many people I see a day, you know, just walking or something like that. So I just feel like that would be a really great outlet to you know, just help.
And talk to me about some of your experiences with police. Have you had positive experiences? Have they come to your neighborhood? Have they come to your school? I mean, do you have a balance to what you're seeing the images of right now?
Yeah, so I'm a very observant person. So it's like I'll just sit there and I'll observe everything and I'll think and try to, like, you know, decrypt the situation in my head. So a lot of times, say when I got pulled over, when my mom got pulled over and I'm sitting in the passenger seat, I'll watch as, like, you know, there'll be two male cops and they'll come to my mom's window and they'll come to my window and, like, have their hand on it. And I'll be thinking, like, you know, like, do you feel like you're threatened a little bit? Like, I will watch his facial movements and stuff like that. But I never really experienced, you know, that racist hands-on, but I would just see a lot of things, or see how I can see, you know, positive police officers, like especially in Detroit, we have some really good police officers, so I would see them, you know, like interacting with the kids or something like that. And so it's just really like cool seeing, you know, the different types of ways people interact and stuff like that.
And so Zoe, I know it was important for your family to try and do something. You know, I know your mom, and I know a lot about you just from your desire to make a difference and to help others that are underprivileged or in need. I received one of the socks that you made. Your mom gave it to me. So talk about that program and how it all came about.
Since I was little, I always wanted to help people. So when I was 10, I don't really know how I had the idea, but I just knew that we needed something to give out, because like money is always hard to give out to homeless people, because you know they could use it for wrong reasons, or they could just not get the stuff that they need. And so I wanted to give something that would be helpful. And so I researched and I looked up what they really needed, and it was like socks, water, toothbrush and toothpaste, and food, basically. And so in the sock, you basically have a sock, and then you put a water bottle and 2 granola bars, toothbrush and toothpaste, and then put the other sock and tie it up. And it's called Caring Kids Kits, because I'm a kid. And we put a little tag on it, and I wanted to help my friends also give instead of just me handing them out. So I gave a bunch to all of my friends, and now they're like in their cars and they can hand them out whenever they see a homeless person on the side of the road.
Like me, I had one in my car and I was able to hand it out. That's an incredible program that you started, and I think it speaks to something that's so important, which is to bring your network of friends to help them understand what you already kind of understood, this compassion that you had for how can I help a homeless person. But other people may not have that same perspective. They may see them and just keep on driving. And so talk about, you know, your family also felt that it was important to go to that march that day, so that you guys can be an example once again. Talk about why that was important as a family to do that.
I mean, it's sometimes you might have like white people might think this isn't our battle to fight, but it is. And so we just wanted to be an example for like, one, I'm like a 14-year-old girl, so kids can go to these things. The protests that we went to are at least peaceful. And so we wanted to show that, one, people my age could go to them and it would just be helpful to learn, be a learning experience, and 2, white allies could go to them.
So did you learn anything? Like what impact did that experience have on you?
I mean, I didn't know that when we were driving there, I thought it would be just like 100 people, and it definitely wasn't. It was a lot of people, and I didn't really realize how many people were fighting for this. And it was just kind of crazy, because if this many people are fighting for this, I don't know why it hasn't already changed.
That's a good point. Very good point. So Kasaya, there have been protests that have been going on in pretty much every city across the metro area, from the inner city to Ferndale, where your family went, and Birmingham, and throughout Macomb County. There's been these demonstrations with crowds of people that are not Black. What do you think about that?
I feel like that's really good. I feel like once you get one person, you know what I'm saying, then that person can get another person, and that person can get another person. So it's just the fact that, and then it's really different from the past. You know, when we had the riots before, I felt like we were, you know, really, really separated. But now, you know, over time, stuff has changed, and I feel like we really have a chance to actually come together now, because the world is different. We have evolved. but we just need more people. Just more people. I feel like it can happen. We just really need all hands on deck.
So from a youth perspective, you're in high school. What is it that you think that you and your peers, from, all different schools all across the country, what can you guys do?
I feel like we can really just try to help and educate, like, the people under us, like, our next generation, because, we are getting older to where, I'm gonna be grown next year, so it's like I have to vote, I have to do all of this, so I really want to help the people younger than me, and I feel like a lot of people my age can do it, just be more involved, to show others, like, oh, okay, it's okay, like, it's cool, like, you're not lame or anything like that. It's just really important to make everybody feel included.
So talk about your school. What's the racial makeup of your school and your experience in school as it relates to race relations and social justice? What are you learning?
Okay, so, I go to Cass Tech, so that's almost 3,000 kids, and our population is mostly Black people, but we also do have a really good, Muslim community, and we have a little bit of, Caucasians, and we have our Hispanic community. But one thing is that we all do know how to be a whole. We're not as separated as you just think. So we haven't, Cass Tech, we are hosting some protests, but I feel like it will be so important if we get majority of our kids on this matter, because we are like the biggest school in Detroit. So I feel like my school, we are going to do more, but it'll be so important if we do even more, than that.
And do you learn about Black history in school, and is that a strong curriculum at your school?
So I do have an African American history class, but I always feel like for teachers there's a box, and you could either teach in that box or you can go above and beyond and try to educate us with something else. The African American history book that talked about, Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and things like that. But my African American teacher, she was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna do projects on the people with police brutality, but I want you to research the people who, didn't have all the news and didn't have all the headlights and didn't get all of that. So that really helped me, realize how many cases there were. So, but you don't have a lot of teachers like that can teach outside the box or that make you go above and beyond so you can see what's just not in the textbook.
And Zoe, how would you describe where you go to school? Is it diverse? Are you learning about diverse cultures?
Yeah, it's mostly white people, but we are learning about, we learn about Martin Luther King Jr. and about Rosa Parks, but I feel like we only learn the stuff that, is in the textbook, like she said.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really learn about any of the other stuff that's happening. We learn about the history, but we don't really learn about the stuff that's happening right now. But I feel like it's really important to learn about the stuff that's happening in the present too, and not just the stuff in the past.
So some of the kids that I talked to about their school, it was kind of a variety in terms of what is being taught there, the different groups, and how kids feel inclusive. And even though Cranbrook is predominantly white, you do have Black students there. There are other kids there. Are there, groups, or just kind of an ability for groups to come together or to learn about each other's cultures, or how does that? Is there anything organized like that there?
I mean, not in middle school, but I know that in high school there are a lot of groups. I know that there's, I'm not sure what it's called, but I know that there's clubs, and for all different types of cultures and ethnicities and races, but not in middle school, but in high school there is.
Yeah, really good. So what do you think needs to happen? What, to help for people to be more compassionate, more understanding, to have a perspective like you, to understand you can go and you can support and you can do more. Like, how do you think that can happen?
I think you, like, on social media, there's a lot of, right now, there's a lot of, like, posts, and it's, like, Black Lives Matter and people at protests. And I think just looking, like, if a kid my age looks at their Instagram and sees people at protests and stuff like that, they'll be like, oh, hey, Mom, Dad, can we go to a protest? And I think that's really good.
Mm-hmm. And why is it good to go, you think?
Because you can really learn a lot. Like, you can learn how big this movement is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think you were surprised by that when you got and saw like the 1,000 people. And you talked about it too, just that this movement has gotten so big. What do you think, what do you want to see happen? What do you want to see, like, it's one thing to be out demonstrating, but what's the next step?
Well, I feel like what could really make a difference is just probably getting everybody on the same board. There's like the Black Lives Matter, but then there's like all lives matter too. So it's like I feel like the people who say all lives matter, they're like, hey, like, what about us? And stuff like that. And it's just like, you're important. Everybody's important. At the end of the day, we're all human.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what they're forgetting. Like, that's the point. At the end of the day, we're all human, but we're getting treated like we're not. So it's like, for a lot of people to get that, for a lot of people to open their minds, for a lot of people to take a step out of their everyday shoes and, step into another, like, wow, like, this is how they live. You wouldn't be able to imagine it. Like, I couldn't imagine being white. Like, in the last interview, she was talking about her white privilege, and it's like, wow, how would I feel, like, to be able to sit here and say, I have privilege in this world? Like, that's mind-blowing, and it's mind-blowing. I can't say that. So just for everybody to really get a new perspective, open their mind, and try to live something that's not their own for at least a day, then we should get some change.
I cannot ask another question. That was excellent. We're going to end on that note. Very good. You guys did a great job.